Last week, the silver sector got a jolt when First Majestic Silver announced that it was acquiring Gatos Silver in an all-share transaction valued at $970 million. CEO of First Majestic is Keith Neumeyer. Keith, welcome back to Kitco.
Well, great seeing you again.
Congratulations. This is something that you've been trying to do for a while. Why did the timing work right now, and why Gatos?
Well, we're always looking for acquisitions. That's that's how we built the business over the last 21 years, and all our mines, in the history of the company, have all been purchased. And that's not going to end. It's interesting to look at timing. If you go back in 2015, we bought Silvercrest. 2018, we bought San Dimas. 2021, we bought Jerritt Canyon. Now 2024, we're buying Gatos. So it seems every 3 years we do a major transaction. So, I don't know what that means going forward, but we are always looking, and we're very happy to get a deal done with Gatos. It was a very competitive process. It took a lot of hard work on our end. Our team really came together and really dug in and worked with the Gatos team, and they've got an exceptionally good team, and I'm really looking forward to putting both teams together under one company, because I think it's really going to help First Majestic and also, of course, Gatos shareholders as well of the combined entity.
Talk about the profile of First Majestic after the acquisition is done. What's going to be your production? What is going to be all-in sustaining cost, and some of those other pieces?
Sure. Not including Lincoln Tata, because Lincoln Tata is a smaller producer. But if you just look at the three major mines, we're putting together three mining districts into one company. It's going to really make us quite unique in the whole market space on silver. Having San Dimas at 75,000 hectares, Santa Elena at 102,000 hectares, and El Gatos at 103,000 hectares. These are big, chunky assets covering huge areas of land and very prolific. Geologically, we think all three assets have a lot of geological upside. So we're looking at, in 2025, to hit close to 32 million ounces of silver equivalent production. 50% of that will be silver, 50% of that will be gold. There's some lead and zinc in there as well. So about 30% will be gold, and the balance is lead and zinc. So it's going to be a great profile, and all-in sustaining costs will come down a little bit because Gatos is a low-cost producer, a little bit lower than it's actually around the same as Santa Elena. So Santa Elena and Gatos would be pretty well on the same tangent, around $15, $14 to $15, and San Dimas is in the 18 range, and so you're looking at probably all-in sustaining costs between 16 and 18 on a combined basis.
I think you were looking at this gets closed early 2025. That was per your discussion on management?
We're looking at Q1. Once you get into Christmas, it's going to be tough. We also have to wait for the Mexican antitrust decision to go through, and then under the new Mexican administration, it's going to be probably one of their first transactions they have to approve, and it'll get approved. There's no issue with that, but it's just a matter of timing. The new government will come in, probably put a new team in place. They're going to have to educate themselves, and it could take 2, 3, 4, 5 months. We don't know. Generally speaking, antitrust takes anywhere from 6 to 12 weeks.
I heard analyst discussion of this as well too. It's a tough place for being a single asset producer right now, which would have been some of the impetus, I guess, from Gatos Silver to do on the side.
Well, I don't know if it is jurisdiction based, but I think all mining companies that are single asset mining companies are at risk. Because you've got one asset, and you go through periods of time where the asset is outperforming the expectations of the market, and you're dealing with Mother Nature. But then you go through a period of time where that asset might be a little bit weaker than expected, and if you have a portfolio of mines in your company, then obviously you could weather the storm if one mine is not profitable or maybe not as profitable as you would like, and often you have one mine carrying the ship. And we've had that happen a number of times in the last 21 years. It's not that unusual.
Last week when you announced the news, the stock did dip right now. What are the markets missing?
Well, it's just an arbitrage. So we paid a 16% premium, and fascinating enough, the stock was down 16% in the week. So I'm not sure if there's a direct correlation, but Gatos was down as well. Silver prices gold and silver prices had a pretty tough week last week. It's very common for this to happen, and you never like to see it happen. And shareholders, of course, get a little bit critical. Look what you're doing. The market must not like the transaction, but it's really not that at all. What happens is the big ARB funds come in and they short the buyer and they buy the seller. Right, because they make that trade, and they trade it back and forth, and they wait till closing, and then when closing occurs, they end up getting First Majestic stock as a result of that trade, and obviously they're hoping to make a profit on that trade. So, we'll see how it all works out. But the stock will likely go through a re-rating. Pan American's a pretty good example. When they took out Humana, their stock was down, I think, around 30% over the next few weeks after they announced that transaction. And today, I think it's doubled what it was when that transaction closed. So, and the same thing happened when we bought San Dimas. The company went through a re-rating, and even earlier than that with the Silvercrest transaction.
Now, this gives you more concentration on Mexico but Mexico has been a bit of a tough place to operate with what they had announced regarding open pit, with also what we're seeing with judicial reforms right now. Right. How do you view Mexico, and how do you manage it?
Well, all our mines are underground, and it's one of the things that attracted us to Gatos is because we're experts with underground mining, and we're very good at it. But the judicial reforms are a concern, of course. How could they not be a concern? When the government is changing laws, we've invested a lot of money in Mexico. We're probably invested pre-Gatos about $2.5 billion over the last 21 years. So we're heavily invested in the country. We're a big employer. I think we're the second largest silver producer in the country. And we're active, or have been active throughout 9 states in the country. So, we're pretty entrenched, and we're not going anywhere. As governments change, as regulations change, as a mining company, we just have to, change with it. And that's what we intend to do.
Jerritt Canyon suspended back in March. What are you fixing there right now? What has to be fixed to bring the operation back?
Yeah, there's nothing being fixed currently. We've been doing an analysis on what it would take to get it back up and running, of course. And right now we've got 3 rigs active. It's the first exploration program that we've had running since the shutdown. So our geological team is pretty excited about what they're doing there. They're looking for an elephant. We'll see if our geo team is correct and they find something there. But we have nothing in the budget for 2025 except exploration. Likely in 2026, we'll start investing in the mill. And if we make the decision, and I'm not saying we are today because the decision has not been made, but if it does get back up and running, it's likely going to be 2027.
Keith, let's talk about macro and gold. Now, you've been following the resource sector for a very long time. You've seen the rises and you've seen the falls right now. So we've had gold that's hit several all-time highs since the beginning of the year right now. What's happening with metal prices? Why is it going up? And what does this look like right now that's happening to the resource sector?
Well, I think the reason why gold is so buoyant is because the central banks around the world. We had, I don't know how many central banks are buying gold, but there's a lot of them, and it's record numbers. I'm seeing stats coming out, on a monthly basis, and country after country is adding to their gold portfolio or gold hoardings, and they want to have gold part of their foreign currency holdings, and you point fingers at a number of different reasons why that's occurring, but it is happening, and so that's the bid. There's this bid under the gold market by big banks that are buying the metal, and that's fantastic. It hasn't shown up really that much in silver yet, and that's one of the conundrums, I think, and maybe that's a viewpoint that we're going to go into a recession, or there might, some think there's going to be a stock market crash. Who knows? But silver prices should be a lot higher. I'm a big ratio guy, and we are mining only 7 or 8 to 1 silver versus gold, and we're trading in the mid 80s, which makes really no sense to me. And you've got the solar panel industry now consuming something like 250 million ounces of silver this year, and the miners are only producing 850 million a year, actually a little bit less than that. And of course, the automotive sector is consuming about 100 million ounces a year. So you've got two markets that are relatively new, at least over the last 10 years, that are consuming 30 or 40% of the world's supply of the metal. And we're in deficits. There's going to be another deficit this year. We don't know what the number is, but the guesstimate is something in the order of 250 million ounces, which was very much like the last year's deficit. How do you run deficits like that and not have it show up in price? But I think silver is still looked at as the poor man's gold, which I don't believe it is. I think it's a strategic metal. It's a critical metal for everything we do. Even this room is full of silver. This TV's behind us. There's probably 5 ounces of silver in that big screen behind us here. And what happens to that? Does that get recycled? No, it doesn't, because it costs a fortune to recycle it. So. And people will wake up to the silver story. I'm certain of it. I've been talking about it for over 20 years now, and I'll continue to talk about silver because I think it's the most important metal that we have as the human race.
Let's talk about silver supply for a minute.
Sure.
Copper prices have been a little depressed right now, and they're looking over the short to medium term that there's going to be more copper supply that's coming on, never mind what's happening with China right now. When I was looking at the Silver Institute, total supply of silver has been about just a little over 1 billion ounces, and that's been for this decade right now, but it's been kind of flat right now. What are you looking at over the next 12 to 24 months in terms of supply coming on or supply not coming on? I would imagine possibly depressed because of zinc, and then zinc being a byproduct with silver.
Well, 150 million ounces of that is recycling.
Yeah.
And so the recycling industry is a tough one to really measure because it's very price dependent. Also, technology is changing. A lot of that silver comes from is still X-rays, surprisingly or not. There's still a lot of old X-ray machines out there that use old film, and there's a whole industry of people that go around and collect all this film, and it gets recycled through the different refineries, throughout North America primarily, and that market is depleting. Who knows exactly what that means long term? And at $100 silver, do you start recycling this television, or do you start recycling your iPhone? I don't know the answer to that. There's $2 or $3 worth of silver in your standard cell phone. And it's embedded into that circuit board, very well, and extremely difficult to get out. The copper, there's a small amount of gold in there, and some zinc as well. And getting the metal out of there is just very, very difficult, and it's very not very cost effective. So I'm not sure if recycling will ever increase to any great degree, unless we see multiples of where we're trading at today. On the supply side or the mining side, we've been around, we dipped down to about 780 million ounces at COVID, and we peaked at 880 million ounces in 2016. And last year we're at 830 million ounces, and this year it'll probably be around about the same. There's really no big mines coming online, and these deficits are real, and then they're not going anywhere. And as long as governments continually push solar panels and electric cars and continually get pushed around the world, and we're not going to stop producing televisions or computers or cell phones or refrigerators or freezers. I remember talking to one of our traders during COVID, and he was saying, geez, we're getting all these orders from these freezer manufacturers, for silver. And I had no idea that there was, of course, there has to be silver in it because there's a whole bunch of electrical components in there, but I just had not really thought about it. And the reason why, because they had a run on freezers, because everyone was buying meat, loading up on meat, and they had to put it in, obviously, in a freezer. So that we had a freezer shortage, and the amount of silver that was being consumed apparently was unusual. So look, it's a great metal to be in, and I can't speak enough about it.
Lastly, I want to get your thoughts broadly on macro. You did talk about deficits and how that is being an impetus for gold. We do have a lot, this is the start of September. We are going into potentially a rate cut. We don't know whether it's going to be 25 or 50. We have the presidential elections are coming up. What are you looking at on the macro basis broadly that could have an impact upon resources?
I don't really think interest rates have any impact on metals. People argue it all the time. Oh, we're going to get a rate cut of X amount, and gold's going to go up, or and so on. But if you do an actual long-term study on interest rates and gold prices, you see, we were having much higher interest rates years ago, and we're hitting all-time highs on gold. Back in the 80s, and inflation maybe has an impact, but the biggest thing that, as I said earlier, that's driving gold prices is the central banks. Something's going on behind the scenes that we're not really aware of, whether it's a currency reset, whether it's some kind of global currency, or whether it's a new Federal Reserve or a new reserve currency. Coming into play. What the BRICS do. Are they going to come out with a currency? Are they going to back it with gold? Because a lot of the BRIC nations are big consumers of gold right now. So, I don't have a crystal ball, but definitely, the world has changed over the last couple of years. When you have central banks being the record buyers, two years consecutively, that tells you something's going on. And though it doesn't appear those buyers are lightening up, they're in there every day buying more gold. So. I'm expecting to see $3,000 gold. I suggested 3,000 by the end of 2024. It doesn't look like that's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised to see $3,000 gold in 2025, and that should drag silver up with it, and hopefully it gets back up to its old highs.
Keith, thanks for your time.
Great. Well, my pleasure.
My name is Michael McRae. You're watching Kitco Mining.